I don't know anything about this. I haven't researched it whatsoever. I'm sorry.
I've got the Zwift Insider page up where I will ask James questions, which I'm literally reading off Zwift Insider to make me sound knowledgeable. Hey folks, what are we drinking tonight?
So I am drinking a pompous ass English ale.
Are you trying to say something there, Craig?
I don't know what I could possibly be saying.
Do you have any normal sounding drinks, or do you just buy the ones with the most random names?
So that is actually my wife's department, where that's how she shops for beer for me.
Is each beer like a review on your week by the wife? So I'd like to say, yeah. You've not been your best week, Craig. Here's your beer for the evening. You pompous ass. Sorry, your pompous ass. James, how about you?
I have a very colourfully labelled bottle of Malbec called Asado, and it's actually very tasty.
It is a very pretty label you were showing us earlier when we were recording the bit that you'll hear later, because we like to mess with time, Christopher Nolan style. And Becca, you?
Vodka tonic, because I'm not exciting. I'm going to have to start getting something more interesting to drink for these things.
Yes, you will. That's all I can say to that. And I'm on Thatcher's Haze and in exactly the same. I live in the West Country now and have to drink cider. So there we go. Right, James Bailey, you've actually done a stupid sprinters route this week. Just I'm going to caution all listeners in advance. We are going to talk about France World, and those of you that listen to the live stream know that James and I will mostly make bad puns about croissants. And mention rollers lots. So probably just skip through the bits where we're talking. Listen to Craig and Becca if you want sensible tips about Zwift racing. Anyway, James, where are we racing this week?
So this weekend, the Herd Summer Racing League is a bit of a sprint fest. We have 2 laps of Douce France, which will see us have time segments for the Ballon Sprint twice, Aqueduct KOM twice, Pavé Sprint twice, and the Marina Sprint once. There's also bonus points on offer for your finishing position in your category. The race is 49.1 kilometers long, and there are 269 meters of climbing. I raced this earlier, and seriously, it is a lot of fun.
Where did you feel the pain?
Probably the hardest parts, like as always, the start. And I think the aqueduct was probably the hardest one, and also probably my imaginary sprint that I made up about 2 kilometers before the Ballon sprint. So I thought I saw the sprint line. Turns out it wasn't a sprint line at all. So after sort of 15, 20 seconds, I was like, hang on, where's the banner? Had to slow down, wait for people to catch up, and then a kilometer later I had to sprint again.
Craig and Becca, I'm just going to imagine us to step into the horrific place that is James Bailey's mind at this point. I suspect that wasn't quite the full process, was it? I suspect there was a moment where he was congratulating himself on dropping the Watt bombs and an epic sprint. Look at that, they're eating my dust, they're nowhere to be seen.
I've dropped everyone.
Impossible to start it out unless you'd have gone for what sounds like about a 2 kilometer solo. Impossible to start that one out, James. So, but we've all been there. We've all made silly attacks at the wrong place.
To be fair, at like 750 watts, I don't think anyone's really going to call that a mega watt bomb.
I would. I mean, that would be huge for me. Go on.
Yeah, I'm not. So, I would take that. Thanks.
So we go through let's go through the route then. First, obviously, it's Zwift, so the race starts quickly. So work hard to stay in the group at the start. We then go through the rollers, don't we? And they are, I think it's know your trainer would probably be the best advice to give to people here. Like, you can get caught out by the resistance train changing and your trainer delay not updating in the same speed. So some of the group can be doing what's that you're not doing, as I understand it.
I'd like to just quickly jump in, Steve, because as a self-confessed rouleur, shouldn't you be exceptionally good at the rouleurs?
I don't think we decided that Steve was a rouleur, did we?
No. He decided he was.
No, you've got me there, and there is literally nowhere I can escargot from that comment, James. So we did warn you. So yeah, what have we got to watch out for on these rollers? So trainer lag, for want of a better word. So that's when the resistance on your trainer hasn't caught up with the gradient. That's the word I'm looking for in Zwift. So you are not putting as many watts down effectively, or the resistance isn't changing. So if your cadence is the same, you're putting down original watts, or somebody with the same cadence. I'm really confused. Please, somebody explain this whole rollers and trainer lag thing.
So I think the most important thing you can possibly do, if your trainer has a 3-second lag, expect to push hard to the top of the roller and then for another 3 seconds afterwards, because after those assuming you have a 3-second lag on the trainer, that your trainer will think that you are now going downhill 3 seconds after you actually are. So make sure you push over the top and you should be okay. But it is, if you've got a trainer with 5-second delay, it makes things an awful lot harder. And I have a trainer with about a 5-second delay, which isn't fun sometimes.
If the makers of the Watt Bike Atom are listening, James would appreciate a new trainer. So Craig, you're an expert at this event. Becca, you're just going to go nails, hard as nails, just be at the front because you're awesome at riding. Craig, any tips here? You're quite good at also positioning in the group as well. What's your tactic through the rollers?
It's kind of, I kind of learned it from the platypus, but it's pump the rollers. It's the same as pumping on a mountain bike or a BMX. It's go hard up and over the top, and then kind of micro recover, and then when you hit the bottom, you go hard again. It's and you can make up a lot of time. You can go really fast, and I mean, if you're riding with the group, because there is absolutely no reason to try and ride away from the group on this course, you can be a little bit more efficient that way in putting out the power on the uphill.
And it will certainly help you. And so, James, I remember us going back a little while to when France was fairly new and going the other way around. You kind of have smaller rollers coming into Aqueduct, and we were both dropped at that point because I think we didn't manage the effort on the rollers well. We were playing catch up every time in the group, which meant that you were this sort of 3 to 5 seconds behind the group when they then put a big effort in, and you haven't had that recovery. Whereas that sounds like great advice to me. You go a little bit earlier, try and bump the rollers, and hopefully you micro recover. I
think one of the things you do have to look out for is in the first half of the lap. This is probably, if you're trying to stay at the front group, this is probably one of the only points in the first half of that lap where you can see splits. So just making sure that you're in touch with certainly the front half of the front group, just to make sure that if there is a split, you're not having to absolutely crucify yourself just to try and get back on.
I think, sorry, I was just going to say, like, this is the point where it is absolutely worth it to empty yourself to stay in the group here. And that's, you can, if you get lost early on this course, you will be many minutes behind in a much shorter amount of time than you think possible.
In my race, I mean, so I think they're about 70, and the front group probably up until the Aqueduct was probably 50 strong, and the guys that had dropped, the 20 guys who weren't in that front group probably all dropped off on the rollers.
So I think the key thing is if you get dropped on the rollers, form a group, because we know the power of the draft. There's lots of points for sprints. You just need to be in a group going for these sprints today. Let's go to our resident sprinter, Becca. How are you teeing up these sprints today or tomorrow?
Yeah,
when did you ride? Are you riding tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm learning about this event as you guys are talking about it, so I'm really not the best person to ask. Plus, knowing who's in my event tomorrow, there's no chance I'm winning any sprints whatsoever. But I mean, I will fully be expecting banner attacks in mind to split the group, because there are certain individuals in the group who will prefer the group to be as small as possible by the time you get to the end. So it will be more sprinting and then hanging on rather than trying to get the best time you can perhaps possibly get, because it will be of more benefit to stay in the group than it will be to inevitably get dropped.
So let's just explain a couple of concepts there for people who maybe aren't too aware of them. So Becca, generally you're a lighter rider, you're a climber. Sprint's going to be hard on what's quite a flat course. We're going to expect the kind of people who can drop kind of thousands of watts in the sprint, or 1,000 watts plus in the sprint, to be in the group, probably in the A's in your category. So they're probably going to be there and able to put down some pretty fast times for the fastest times primes. And what you don't want to do is make the race too easy for them, because they'll be able to stay with you over Aqueduct, which is the kind of one opportunity as a lighter rider you've got to try and gap them. So you'll be thinking, when people put their effort in through the sprint, you try and stay with them in the draft, and then go nuts for about another 30 seconds afterwards. So attack after everyone's gone through the banner, where people are trying to recover from their sprint effort. And if there's somebody who's spent a bit too much energy there, you might catch them out and drop them. And the hope is that they're some of the faster riders on the flat that you drop as well. Is that right?
It's more that I'm expecting certain people. I've got most of my ZRL team, admittedly, during tomorrow's race, which isn't great because a lot of them are actually better than me. So I should probably stop persuading them to do my races. And
are you the Chris Froome of your group, that kind of you're just trading on former glories then? Is that the...
Yeah, that's entirely I'm no longer any good. So I'm expecting certain people I know in the race to be banner attacking. So yeah, I should probably stop saying this, because I should stop giving away the tactics.
No, Becca does not expect any surprise banner attacks, mysterious competitors of race. So it's then flat and pretty dull. There is no tactic other than sit at the back of the group, don't get dropped, expend minimum watts, Bowser to the best of your ability, and then we hit the Aqueduct KOM, which is basically a long sprint. Although our Dutch listeners would claim it is a giant mountain, and many, many meters tall. But it's basically about a 45-second to minute effort for most people in a sprint. Different tactics for different people. Most people go really, really hard at the start, and then try and recover on the flat bit at the top. Other people, I've seen this actually work, will sort of time trial the bottom. It depends a lot on positioning. Time trial the bottom to stay in the group, and then sprint the flat bit, because that's where you'll go faster, and catch people up. So
the second one is wrong.
You will, if you absolutely hammer the hill, you will make more time up against your competition than you would do for going fast on the flat, because the relative speed difference on the flat will be, it might look like you've got a bit of a gap, but the relative difference is minimal. Whereas if you're going sort of like 7-8 watts per kilo on the climb versus people who are doing 4-5, you're going to make up so much more time on them than you would do on the relatively short flat spot.
Yeah, I'll be doing 3 watts per kilogram, so I'm getting dropped either way. So yeah, it's like most climbs, go hard on the steepest bits of the climb and less hard on the less steep bits of the climb is a good general rule of thumb, isn't it? But yeah, this one, Craig, it's quite an extreme. You're putting a face at me, disagreeing with that statement. Let's wait until a hilly stage and we can reignite this argument. So Craig, you'd agree with James, go hard on the climby bit of Aqueduct.
Go hard on the whole thing. I mean, it's only 35 seconds. Just go hard. It's a sprint.
Hammer the primes.
Absolutely hammer it. It's it's just another sprint. It's the longest sprint on this course, but it's a sprint.
And then it's not actually that far, is it? We go down Aqueduct through a few more rollers. Ideal place to make the downhill feather attack, fans of that. And then we hit the Pave sprint, don't we?
I think it's only about 2 kilometers, and like after you've absolutely hammered the Aqueduct, that comes up on you really, really, really fast.
So I'm going to ask a naive question here. Is the Pave sprint even more advantageous to proper sprinters? So actually, people who drop big watts, rather than punchier sprinters, so lighter people who can get the watts per kilogram, the same as those heavier riders, because it's on Pave.
I don't really think the fact it's on Pave makes any difference. I think the fact it's flat means that it's all about the watt bombs. So if you are a heavier rider able to stick out 1,200-1,300 watts, you will win these sprints, rather than, let's say, someone lighter who's able to do 14-15 watts per kilo and only do 900,000. It's going to be the guy who does 1,300-1,400 watts that wins a sprint because it's flat.
So basically you're saying I'm screwed tomorrow.
I think it
I'd say
depends entirely on how you position yourself.
I think the pave sprint is probably the one that you're at the biggest disadvantage, Becca, because that's where the draft is going to matter the least because of the increased rolling resistance.
Wonderful. I shall look forward to this even more.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
For those who didn't watch the feed, most of our build up to the live feed would be James and I, Becca and I abusing James for his poor choice of route. So whichever route he chooses, we just complain. It's very British of us. The more we complain, the more we love you. And then right, next bit, nice flat bit for about kind of 10 kilometers. It's flat before you hit the rollers again, isn't it? So that is just going to be sit in the bunch and recover. Nobody's going to try any attacks, are they? I mean, what's going to your race seems like it's going to be full of attacks. My race will be down in 50th. I'll probably be at 2 watts per kilogram by this point, having a nice endurance ride in the bees. Probably chatting to people on Facebook, I'll be honest. But Becca, Craig, James, you've been at the front of races. What will that look like?
Slow.
I don't know. So there's 2 kind of ways this can go, because I can see people watching and having and communicating on Discord, and if the wrong person gets a little bit of a gap, this could get really, really hard.
Oh, is Captain Shenanigans out again tomorrow, Craig? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's just I mean, I know there are some other teams, and I'm trying to get our guys to do it a little bit more as well. They're chatting on Discord while they're racing, and if another team's strongest rider is off the back by 4 or 5 meters, they're ready to go.
And that can happen. I mean, again, the other way around. But James, you and I had, I can't remember what the event was, but we were in France, and it was the bit before we got to the rollers, before the aqueduct going the other way. There was just a random gap. We were at the back, a random gap opened up, and we both ended up having to do a bit of a sprint time trial effort to get back to the group. So those little gaps can still open. If you'd have been feeling particularly mischievous, you'd have made the burrito one of the power-ups, because I think that would have been a burrito in this section would be interesting, because that would have killed the draft for people. You could actually deploy burritos in the middle of the pack and attack to try and mess with people if you're doing team tactics. So there's my evil suggestion to you for future DS suggestions, James.
So just to quickly jump in on what happened in my race between the Parve sprint and Marina sprints in a very non-combative race, and let's be fair, it was very, very mellow. That I think we might have had one sort of like semi-attack in the last 5 kilometers of race, but other than that, it was very gentle. The pace between Parve and Marina slowed down massively, to the extent that the front group was probably holding 3-0, 3-1, and not much more than that. So it was very, very gentle, especially on the second lap. But I'll certainly be interested to see what happens in the 9 a.m. race tomorrow. How many attacks are going off the front? I'm sure it'd be great to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it would be an interesting tactic to try if you had a group of 8 or 9 of you, and the pace was slowing down to the kind of minimum you'd expect in your category at the front group. So you're talking about a B's race there, James. Kind of 3's about the slowest the front end of a B race ever goes, really, isn't it? And whether you decided as a group of 8 or 9 of you, right, we'll do a 2 to 3 minute really hard effort as almost like a team time trial, just to see if we shell anyone. And that's individually, that might mean kind of a 45-second effort each. So am I burning that many matches? Could we get away with it? It would be interesting to watch. I'd hate it if it happened, because the herd's never organized enough to do this, and it's other teams that do this better against us, really, isn't it?
The one thing I did notice, and it's slightly unrelated, but since the changes to like rider position and draft and all of that, the one thing I really noticed today is the moment I accidentally hit the front of a group, I was on the back of a group within 5 seconds. And so I was almost having to do like mini pulls, because I'd accidentally hit the front, and I was very, very careful throughout the rest of the race to try and make sure that I did slow up before. If I was progressing through the group, I would slow down to try and stop myself hitting the front, because the moment that I did, I would shoot backwards really quickly and then have to put out a really big effort just to stay in the group again, which is a bit weird. But yeah, that's how it was.
I mean, it's a bit more like real life. Becky, you've probably done quite a few chain gangs. Like, you hit the front, you hit the wind, you go backwards if you stop pedaling.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there used to be a section of our chain gang where it was quite a busy road, and if you were stuck on the front where the cars couldn't overtake, basically you were stuck there for like 2 or 3 minutes, and it was always the worst 2 or 3 minutes of your life, because you were putting out so much more power than everyone else. And somehow nearly every chain gang I ended up on the front at this point. I swear they did it just to mess with me. But yeah, great chain gangs. They're sort of back now in England, so that's fun.
Yeah, I've still not braved an outdoors yet since the move to the west. So let me go around again. So let's imagine we've done that, and then we hit the marina sprint, which is again pretty straightforward sprint. It's a slightly longer one. We're not talking stupidly long desert sprint, but it's also not kind of the standard 250-meter Zwift sprint. So it's 350. I think you were saying, James.
3:30.
So it's a 20-second sprint rather than a 15-second sprint, I guess.
Yeah, I'd go with that. And it's just before you hang a right towards the finish banner. But yeah, so on the first lap, it's all about the time segment, whereas there is no time segment on the second lap. Obviously, that's the end of a race as well. So you could see some shenanigans going on. And if your name is Stephen Pritchard, you'll probably want to go about 700 meters.
Yeah.
Probably want to go about
Far too late. Always attack on a kilometre, James. I will go at 1 kilometre to go and nowhere else.
I was trying to say, if your name is Stephen Pritchard, you probably want to go about 700 meters earlier.
True, yeah. 670 meters earlier, James. It's always at a kilometre. And kudos to Marilyn and Gav, who completely knew that was happening in Paris last week and just came with me. So, right, that's it. Bike choice. I mean, obviously, Pink'Tron, second bike choice.
Last week I won S-Works Venge and Rainbow Disc Wheels, and I'm probably going to do the same again this week. Sorry.
So that's your fastest flat bike.
Yeah.
For those of us who don't have posh wheels yet.
Yeah, fastest flat bike, definitely. And I would say for anybody that doesn't have the Venge and a disc wheel set, that is the Tron. But either disc wheel set and the Venge is slightly faster, but I mean, we're talking about the sprints more than the flats here. It is about those tiny little bits of time.
And if you haven't got the Tron and you're low level, is the Air Road probably still one of the better flat bikes here?
So Air Road, Madone, there's a Cervelo one that's fast around level 20-ish.
And are these any brands that you approve of? I could see Becca pulling a face at the Madone and Trek in general.
I don't approve of any of them. I don't approve of the fact that I have to use the S-Works Venge, but I mean, what has to be done to win races these days?
We just need Colnago to pay Zwift money to make their bikes the fastest, and then you would be a happy lady, wouldn't you?
And I'll be fine. Or Pinarello. I'll take either.
Oh, not Pinarello.
Bianchi? Would Bianchi be acceptable?
Bianchi would be acceptable. Pinarello
would be acceptable. I would take Bianchi.
Pinarello were ruined for me by the kind of Team Sky Daleks riding them and making racing really boring. But that's another podcast entirely. Cool. So we've done bike choice. We've done route. What else do we normally talk about? I'm really tired this week and completely unprepared. What should we talk about next?
Annoyed us on Zwift this week?
To be honest, I'm actually happy with the Zwift this week. Last week, I complained that they were taking weight and height from Zwift Power. And this week, they have retracted that and they are keeping weight and height on Zwift Power, at least for the time being. So, yeah, no more very short people who weigh 25 kilos, or at least they're not going to get away with it for a little while longer.
I think for me, and this is a little bit picky. So obviously, Zwift have announced this week they have a partnership with the IOC to deliver a virtual Olympic racing series on Zwift, and we've basically said that we all know there's going to be a Tokyo route. Because they were talking about putting in a Tokyo route for the Olympic Games last year before they were suspended. I would have loved to have seen Zwift say, yeah, we've got this amazing partnership with the IOC. We've got this brilliant route. There's going to be 2 sprints. We've got a couple of KOMs in there. Here's the details of the route. Aren't you really excited? We're really, really, really excited to be able to give this to you. And we're going to talk to you about it and answer all your questions. But unfortunately, Zwift have just said, here's a press statement. If you ask us a question we can't answer, we're just going to say, we'll tell you in a month. And that's what's annoyed me about Zwift.
Craig.
So I'm not annoyed with Zwift this week. It's really unusual, but I'm completely not annoyed with Zwift this week. I had a great ride outside on earlier this week before we had several days of snow. Then we had several days of snow in April, which drives me nuts. And I had Zwift to ride on, so I'm very happy with Zwift this week.
I'm kind of sharing James's one slightly in that kind of I saw the Olympic stuff be announced, and I think I don't know. I'm kind of annoyed with Zwift in advance because they've mentioned in there they're going to get rowing done, and they're also going to get like I know I kind of jest about rowing will get done before they fix all the things that are broken that would actually be good about them fixing cycling, but like running's been in beta mode for over a year now. I don't think running is not out of beta yet, is it? And they've said they'll fix that. I'm kind of like I think rowing's a bit of a joke, but kind of running, there are a lot of people that run. We know a lot of people in the herd that like to run as well. I think a decent running mode would be good. My boss does running and he's like, yeah, it's great in beta, but it's kind of hasn't quite got the same community it feels like with cycling. So I'm kind of annoyed with Zwift that like it's taken them this long to be like, hey, we've got these products that are in beta that people might like, we might actually fix, and we've got the Olympics, and I don't know, it all feels a bit but I'm going to talk about the thing that made me happy, which is completely outside of Zwift, but I just want to celebrate an absolute rock star. So Anna van der Breggen won her 7th Flesh Wallon in a row last weekend. Anyone who watches cycling, this is the one that goes up the Mer de Huy, and I think with the route this time they did it like 5 times. This is the Mer de Huy. Look it up, it's an absolute wall. I'd absolutely love it on Zwift. I'd ride it on 100% difficulty once, cry, probably destroy my knees, and then ride it on 10% difficulty, but it would be a great little climb to have on Zwift, and I think that's what's annoyed me a bit about Zwift. Actually, like you say, James, they've got this partnership. We all pretty much know the Worlds are going to be a course that they choose to do, like a few more courses like that, so we could do some of the monuments, some of the world courses. Like, let's get some more worlds out Zwift, let's get some worlds going. It's been a while since France, but my happy thing, Anna van der Breggen, and she's retiring this year, so she's won it 7 times in a row, and she said someone else can do it now. So how lovely, and absolute hardcore rock star up the Mer de Huy. Google it, it's a hell of a climb. And I think that's everything. I think the last thing I'm going to mention, we keep mentioning this when we chat afterwards, but the last thing I'd like to mention is that I'm pretty sure Craig is frozen. I'm really confused at this point. But no, he's just not moving. So the last thing I'll mention is Discord. We've talked about it a few times tonight. Craig's talked about how people from other teams that we don't like to mention, sorry, Sean, that do this well. I think actually I would, team shenanigans aside, I would big up just, it's quite fun on Discord. When we did the stupidly long route around Wildtopia a few weeks ago, I was talking to Jodie, I was talking to Claire, I was talking to another chap who I think was called David. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. And none of us, I saw Claire briefly at the end. I didn't see Jodie for the whole race. I didn't see this other chap for the whole race. But we had a great time. We had a good laugh. We were keeping each other company. Jodie was warning us how evil the hills were that were coming up. So it's just a fun, nice place to be on. It's a real shame that Zwift doesn't make it in-game. See previous rant. But yeah, go to Discord. How do we find Discord, James?
It is bit.ly/herd
I think you'd say
Discord.
bit.ly. If you're listening to a podcast and you don't know what a bit.ly is, something's gone very wrong in your life.
Fair enough. So bit.ly/herd Discord. And quick shout out to the other guys and girls who were on Herd Discord for race 1 tonight. We had a good crowd, and it certainly helps.
Cool. And before we say goodbye, I'm just going to, because I think we forgot to promo it at the start, but stay tuned for a great chat with Marius. And how do you say his surname, James?
Midtskogen.
And you said it right first time as well. He'll verify that very soon after we stop talking now. But stay tuned for a great chat. Grandfather of the herd, I might say. He is, in the beginning, there was Marius and 9 other people, and they founded the herd. Becca's just rolling her eyes at us. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Hey everyone, so tonight we're joined by Marius Midtskogen, whose surname I've probably mispronounced. Marius, as everyone I'm sure knows, is one of the admins from the Herd group. But Marius, most importantly, what are you drinking tonight?
Hey everyone, this is a can of Brewdog Elvis juice, which is an IPA, grapefruit infused IPA.
Marius, sorry, Steve, given how expensive Norway is, and especially imported beer into Norway, how much does one of those cans cost? £4.
Yeah, €4. €4.
I remember going to Trondheim when I was about 25. It was the middle of a summer, so it was drinking in the pub at 2 o'clock in the morning and it was still light. And paying equivalent of £6.50 for a pint of English lager,
which is fairly cheap these days. I think when you go out today, especially if you go to a real pub that serves real beer, like craft beer or stuff like that, you will often end up paying somewhere between 8 and 12.
So plenty of time at home for free drinks.
Yep.
I've heard, much like many of the herd events that James Bailey organises, the trick is to just go out and enjoy yourself and not worry too much about how much it's costing you and how painful it is.
Exactly.
I'm saluting you from the UK, Marius. You're drinking what I would normally be drinking when we do the live commentary. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the Elvis juice. And Nate Home will also be a big fan because he's a shareholder. So you're putting money directly into his pocket. So he'll be super chuffed. Anyway, I often write about the time before the herd in my TTT reports, but apparently you were actually there. And then some people have claimed that my writing is in fact just fiction because I don't remember anything that happens on rides. So tell us about this time and how the herd came into being.
So to go back to the beginning, I joined. There was another group before the herd where sort of everyone who started the herd met each other. So that group was started in 2017. And I joined that group in October or November of 2017, like a month or something after I started Zwifting. So we all got to know each other, and I started out sweeping. Then I got into leading, and before you knew it, I was probably leading or sweeping 3 or 4 or 5 times a week. Really enjoyed the camaraderie and all that. But then, there was something with the leadership from the other group that wanted to go in a different direction than what I and a lot of the other leaders wanted to. So we decided at one point to go our different ways, and we started the herd and took most of the rides that we had with the other group over to the herd.
Marius, you mentioned that you joined this other group a month after you started Zwifting. What got you into Zwift in the first place?
Well, at the beginning of 2017, I was 125 kilos, and I had decided to start exercising. So I started doing spin classes at my local gym. That really got me going. I started out like once or twice a week, and then it went up to 3 or 4 times a week, and then it was basically every day towards the end. My boss at work, he challenged me to sign up for a race in Oslo. It was a 64-kilometer race, so I bought a bike. And I started racing, which was kind of cool. I liked the way that I was able to push myself on a bike in a race situation. So when October came, of course that's winter here in Norway. It gets cold, it gets wet, snowy. As a beginner cyclist, you're not really into the whole getting wet and cold kind of thing. The first year. So I started, I think I came across Zwift like randomly from a search or cycling search. I was searching for something online, and then I came across Zwift, and I looked into it. I went to my local bike shop. I bought a trainer, which had smart in the name, but what I didn't know was it didn't have any resistance. So the first year I rode without resistance. It was one of those kinetic fluid road machine things. Brilliant piece of kit, very solid, but no resistance. So basically that's how I got into Zwift. I bought a trainer and just went for it.
So people who unbelievably, as if it's even possible, but don't follow you on Instagram or see your posts on Facebook, probably won't know you've been doing an awful lot of riding outside in the last couple of months. So I'm guessing it hasn't been quite as cold as we'd normally associate with Norway. Tell us a little bit about where you live and what the rides are like around where you are, because obviously the scenery around you has been fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the whole riding outdoors thing really took off last year, I think, with COVID. I needed to, instead of just sitting inside all the time, I needed to get out. I needed to clear my head. I needed fresh air. Still needed exercise. Of course, when you're at the point of having lost 40 kilos, you just need to keep it going, so to say. So my slogan last year was ride everything, which was basically me trying to push myself outdoors, even though the weather was cold or it was raining or whatever it was. I just needed to push myself to get outdoors. So I live in a place called Larvik, which is about 1.5 hours south west of Oslo, along the coast. So it's one of the places in Norway that has the most days of sunshine, actually, during the year.
Isn't that a bit like saying it's one of the bits of the Titanic that was least sunk?
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. That was least wet. Mm-hmm. We can be lucky and have winters here without snow. Like last year, I don't think we had any snow except for maybe 1 week. So we were basically outdoors riding every weekend. And you know, in winter it's very dark early here. It gets dark before you get off work, so there's no riding outside unless you like doing that, like riding in the dark, which I'm not really accustomed to yet. Yeah, there's a lot of beautiful landscape here, and a lot of roads that we can ride, and there's not too much traffic if you stay off the really busy roads. So a lot of options. I can go east, west, north, not too much south though, because we hit water pretty quickly. But yeah, there's a lot of options. Terrain wise, it's very undulating. Is that the right term? Undulating?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a lot of ups and downs. We don't really have any huge mountains around here, but it's a good bit of climbing. It's like I've tried to look into this, and it seems like on average we have somewhere between 12 and 15 meters of climbing per kilometer. So it racks up pretty quickly when you start going for longer rides. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, that's good. So
was that the answer to your question, James?
Yeah, no, that's all good.
I mean, we're a bit stuck here because James and I and Becca don't really understand what the cold is, but we have got a Canadian who probably understands that. And James and I don't really ride outside, so Becca's going to ask you questions about the outside, I think.
I lived in Norway for 5 years.
Brilliant.
These things are easily forgotten. You're just a man who lives in Sheffield now, James. So Marius, you obviously do the group rides in the herd, and I think a lot of people are encouraged from that to come and join the racing league, which James does a lot of the organisation for, and a lot of people come to that through the team time trials as well, don't they? I think. But what would you say to people who are in the herd league, are in the herd group, who are just doing the social rides at the moment, who may be in the same boat you were in? They've joined Zwift, they haven't got resistance, they just want to do some exercise. What would you say to them about dipping the toe in the water of doing some races on Zwift?
I'd say go for it, because racing is so much fun. As long as you have it in the back of your mind that you're only racing against yourself, because that's the most important thing. You're racing against your own results. If you got that in the back of your mind, you're gonna have a lot of fun. You know, just getting out there, racing against yourself and against others. It's so much fun, and you push yourself in a way that you cannot do in any other setting, is what I find.
Talking about pushing yourself, Marius, I can certainly recall a couple of times being on a race with you. I think I was probably Cat C and you were in Cat B, and you were like, oh yeah, the main group's about 10 seconds in front, I'm going to try and catch up, and you did it, and I couldn't believe you'd actually managed to make 10 seconds on the lead group, and you were absolutely spent.
That's the problem, because I don't race to win anything. I don't care about medals, or if I can beat someone by 2 seconds. If I can close a gap of 5 or 10 seconds, that makes me happy. If that ruins the rest of the race, so be it. It doesn't matter, right? I've done what I set out to do, and I went as hard as I could, and yeah, and that's okay for me.
I think Marius has got maximum panache then in the group. I'm a fan of doing things just because we would get the sponsors watching, basically, if it was the Tour de France coverage, and not actually winning. Anyway, it's my excuse for not winning, but it sounds like, just randomly closing the gap to the group in front. That is panache, isn't it?
Marius, you probably know that our HBR or Herd Beginner races over the winter series were extremely popular. With thanks to some French people who came to join us, we had upwards of 600-700 people in one race, and I know Gavin Ions was particularly unimpressed by his lovely quiet 9 o'clock Saturday morning getting ruined by 450 French triathletes turning up, but I digress. You initiated HBR originally, and it's definitely different to how it looks now. I recall there was a maximum average wattage of 2.5 watts per kilo.
Yeah, that's right. We when we started it out, we wanted to do something completely different from what was on Zwift already. So we sort of took Cat D and split that into 4 categories, which was possible to do on Zwift Power, especially at the time. I've not been too active on Zwift Power lately, so I don't know if it's still possible, but they probably still have the 8 categories that you can use on there.
That profile is still there.
Yeah. So we started out with the top end ending at 2.5. We wanted to make an environment that was really friendly to people who hadn't raced before. And then our thing was like, okay, when you top out in Cat A, which is 2.5, you're safe to go into real Zwift racing, like joining other Cat D or even Cat C rides or races. So that's sort of how we started. And at one point we just had the three races on Saturday.
Yep.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, there were 3 time slots on Saturday that we started out with.
There was 1 on Friday, 2 on Saturday.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this race coming up in 30 minutes, which was one of the first original time slots, right?
Yep.
And then the noon race on Saturday and the later one.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. So at one point we just, as the herd grew, it just became impossible to focus on everything. So I reached out to James and asked him if he would, because I'd seen his interest in racing and all the posting on the racing league and all that, and I thought he would be a really good fit to sort of develop the racing league going forward. He had a lot of ideas, stuff like that. So I asked him if he wanted to be the race director, and thankfully he said yes, and has made the racing league pretty much what it is today, and with all of you other people helping out too. That's it's just been amazing to watch. So
and because it's not a C category racer win, God, I can't talk. James will be far too modest to talk about this. If it was a race win, he'd have already told us, by the way. But the racing league, James, has gone from, the numbers have just gone bonkers. I mean, I think COVID and lockdowns have made Zwift numbers go bonkers anyway, but both the herd and the herd racing league seem to be well ahead of that, don't they? The numbers in the year I've been around here have been like more than doubled, haven't they? So how have the numbers changed in the last year or two?
We've grown from 300 in April 2019 to, I'm going to check, I think we've just gone over 6,000 in
I think
racing
you're
league.
close to 6,000.
I think we've gone over. How big's herd now? Is it 13, 14,000?
So racing league is 6,200 and the herd is 12,900.
That's pretty incredible, guys. I mean, much of this podcast is put aside to taking the mick out of James Bailey, but I think actually credit where it's due, like to the 2 of you and loads of the other people, all the people who sweep, people like Corey who put together great posts on her, do the kit. My kit's arrived. In fact, I'm going to go and change into it for the bit that we'll record later, which will actually have appeared earlier. Yeah, I mean, credit to all you guys. That's just incredible numbers. And I think for me, that's what keeps people on Zwift. Like I wouldn't have stuck with Zwift if it wasn't for the sense of community I found. Kind of it, you go through periods. I don't know, Craig, Becca, if you've had the same. You go through periods where like the outdoors is fun and life is fun, and you're just a bit cheesed off with Zwift and it's not doing it for you, and then you jump onto a ride with some people from the herd and you have a bit of a chat, and actually it's just having a nice ride with people who are also nice humans. So yeah, credit to you folks there.
So honestly, I joined the Zwift in 2018 for 2 months in the dead of Canadian winter. Then did the same thing again for 2 months in the dead of 2019 winter. And then in 2019, actually, I joined one herd ride and had a great time, but it was right towards the weather's getting okay. And I left Zwift, paused my membership. And then in 2020, I kind of found that the Monday morning coffee with Corey ride again, and jumped into the herd, and then found the racing league, which I wouldn't have found. And really, that's really what drew me to Zwift, was the herd and the herd racing league and the community. I mean, other than that, it's a fun training tool, but not something that I would spend as much time on.
It's exactly. It's not something that just keeps you going unless you have a sense of community, a sense of camaraderie, and I think the great thing about the herd and what we've managed to create is the engagement we have. On a running 60-day average, we have more than 90% user engagement with almost now 13,000 members, which is the numbers are just unheard of in virtual communities and Facebook groups. It's just crazy. Nice kit.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, this is a podcast, so people can't see. I've just run to change it to my herd kit and to get another drink. But that's crazy. That's crazy high engagement. We see the same. I mean, we far smaller numbers, so really dodgy stats. But we see the same with the podcast. Kind of people listen to 4 people just rambling rather pointlessly about chasing pixels, and yet people engage with it and listen to it, which just blows me away. But I guess kind of, so what's the best advice you'd have to people about Zwift, like or Zwift racing? You've probably had thousands of conversations with people who have got worries. What would you say is the thing that comes up the most often that you're asked on the group rides or anything about Zwift, and what's the best advice you could give to people?
I think the best advice I can give is just like, take it easy. Don't let this platform stress you out. There's a lot of people that get into stuff and they're stressed out about this or that, and this doesn't work, and there's something that goes wrong. And I just say, come on, take it easy. It's nothing to worry about. Ask a question, we'll answer it. Use the power of the herd to help you, because all the knowledge is out there within our group, and it's a safe environment for everyone to use.
I think one of my earlier memories of being in the herd, and my story was, I got onto Zwift. I tried to do a group ride with a rival group, and I got dropped, and I quit straight away. And then I found the herd on Facebook and joined through them, and I did group rides with them, and it was brilliant. But one of my sort of like almost inspirational things was doing the Tour of Watopia in 2019, and the first 6 stages, they're okay, generally about an hour, maybe a little bit more at my level of fitness for the time. But stage 7 was Watopia Pretzel. And I took one look at that and went, nah, mate, no chance whatsoever. And then there were a bunch of people on the herd going, oh, I can't believe I've just managed to do it. And I was like, I can do this as well. I'm going to try. It took me 4.5 hours. I averaged about 1.2 watts per kilo. But I was so proud of myself when I did it, and that was entirely down to the engagement from the rest of the herd community encouraging me to be able to do that. And obviously this happens to hundreds and thousands of people as well.
And I think that's one of the cool things you've done recently. I mean, when France World launched, I remember just jumping into one of the tour stages, so you could do France World earlier, and people I didn't even know had the herd tag just randomly mooing at each other on a stage was fantastic, which credits the community. But you've done a really cool thing recently with the Tour of Watipia, haven't you, Marius, where you were deliberately waiting in the pen for a set amount of time and then riding together?
Yeah, we started doing that actually a couple of years ago for things like Tour Watopia, Tour de Zwift. We just hang out in the pen for 2 minutes after the start, so we can sort of let everyone else go, and then we'll set a watt per kilogram to go for. I think I've done it like 1.5 or something, which seems to be seems to work for everyone. And we just ride together. I just try to be a leader without a beacon, and then just, you know, send out some messages and try to engage everyone to stay together, and then we ride the stages. And yeah, it's great fun. It's a great sense of community, and there's a lot of moving.
When I had my interview with Zwift Italy a couple of weeks ago, they're like, "Oh, so James, you're part of the herd," and then they started making moo noises. So it's well known throughout the community.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
And I'd say I think that is credit to you guys. I think most people listening to this will have had experience of the internet and forums, and they soon become the lowest common denominator and people just hurling insults at each other. And that just really doesn't see the herd seems to be the complete opposite of that. Like, it doesn't matter how many times somebody will ask a question that you've seen, and you and James would have seen hundreds more times than Craig and Becca and I would have seen it. And people will just jump on and go, "Hey, here's the answer. This is where you find it." None of this like, "Let me Google that for you" kind of smart ass comments. It's always really like, "Yeah, you're new. Here's where you find it out. That's fine. Don't worry." Kind of, it's so reassuring. So credit to you folks there. Marius, is there anyone else you'd want to give a shout out to that you think's done a great job in kind of making the herd and the herd racing league what they are today?
Well, I already mentioned James for the work he's done for the racing league. I think that's just amazing. For the herd in general, it's of course the 10 founders. You know who you are, so I'm not going to mention all your names. Corey, of course, for doing all the kit work, and the work with Primal Wear, which is our kit partner. All the sweeps and leaders out there, all the moderators, fantastic, and of course all the members. Moo.
What a great note to end on. I think we should all just have to moo at each other now to finish this, shouldn't we? So thanks very much for your time, Marius, and moo.
Moo.
Mm.
Moo.